My name is William Gali, and I'm Senior Program Advisor at Family for Every Child, based in India. I also moderate the mental health cross-cutting theme. Family for Every Child is an alliance of currently 42 civil society organizations in 38 countries. We have goals around preventing family separation, strengthening families, ensuring high-quality alternative care when needed, and protecting children outside of any care. Our members have rich and unique understanding of the situation for children and families in local contexts, as well as potential solutions and effective interventions for improving children's care. As a global alliance, we work to ensure that more children can grow up safe and protected in families and be provided with quality alternative care when needed. Therapeutic approaches was one of the key themes in Family for Every Child program strategy. And in the new strategy, mental health has been integrated as a cross-cutting theme. The key achievements that we want to build on them in the new strategy is to continue documenting members' therapeutic approaches and shared with members and wider community, and continue the participatory action research, delving deeper into the approaches that members are using and reflecting on what makes our work therapeutic. The mental health working group, the thematic area, want to consider to define more what actually mental health is. And it is not always a formal therapy that leads to change. The way children and families are approached, cared for during distress or difficulty, the relationships that are nurtured and sustained. So therapeutic interactions are therefore those that contribute to a mental, physiological, or emotional state being regulated more healthily, a thought or feeling being more bearable, something different happening in somebody's emotional life, someone having a better story about themselves, someone understanding themselves differently, something being tolerated, someone reestablishing contact with self and others, an experience being taken in or used more healthily, and a therapeutic relationship contributes to a change that lasts beyond the relationship ending. Our speakers today, so today's event is the second in our series of 3 webinars on the importance of supporting mental health in children's care. This webinar builds on discussions from our last webinar in August, which some of you may have attended, and the third webinar will take place in December. Our speakers today will share with us how they are supporting the mental health of children within their communities across 4 respective contexts: healing through counseling and building interpersonal relations, Jennifer from CPTCSA Philippines; supporting children's emotional needs by creating safe spaces and building family relationships, from Angel and Leonard from JUCONI; helping children to understand their feelings as the bedrock for good mental health, Caryn from Mulberry Bush; using art therapy and creative participatory experiences to support mental health, and Stella from Talent Vida, Colombia. CPTCSA and Mulberry Bush slides will be in English, while JUCONI and Talent Vida slides will be in Spanish. We hope that you will be able to follow along in your interpretation language in order to understand the content. These presentations will be followed by the opportunity for open discussion and questions. We invite you to share your own examples of approaches you are using, your experiences, successes, and challenges, so that we can all learn from one another. And I would like to introduce our panelists representing 4 of Family for Every Child's member organizations. We have Jennifer Weaver, joins us from the Center for the Prevention and Treatment of Child Sexual Abuse in Philippines. Jen oversees the operations of CPTCSA's treatment program. She is a licensed social worker and counselor to both victims and perpetrators of sexual abuse. We have Angel Rojas Garzón, the Director of Programs at Foundation JUCONI in Mexico, where he supports vulnerable children, adolescents, and families. For over 14 years, he has worked with families experiencing family violence. And we have Angel Leonardo Velazquez, who is a therapist for JUCONI's program of specialized therapeutic care, accompanying children and families in vulnerable situations and experiencing patterns of intergenerational violence. He has also worked as a teacher, trainer in public institutions for the creation of safe school environments. And we have Dr. Caryn Onions, who is the head of research and development at Mulberry Bush, UK. She is a child and adolescent psychotherapist. The Mulberry Bush is a therapeutic school and children's home for 5 to 13-year-olds affected by early trauma in the UK. And finally, we have Stella Duque Cuesta. She's the executive director of Tala de Vida in Colombia. Tala de Vida was established in 1994 by a group of women led by Stella, who sought to transform the impact of socio-political violence and armed conflict on the lives of boys.
Conflictos armados.
So without now further delay, I would like to turn to you, Jen, and invite you to share your perspectives on the importance of supporting mental health and the approaches you take at CPTCSA. Welcome, Jen.
Hello. Hello, good morning, everyone. So I'm going to talk about the interventions of the CPTCSA, or the Center for the Prevention and Treatment of Child Sexual Abuse. So CPTCSA is a client-centered agency operating in the framework of social work, persons, and environment. So we provide holistic treatment for child sexual abuse victims, which includes individual, group, and family counseling. So as for our treatment services, first is we have the counseling in the form of individual, group, or family. Wherein in counseling, we first meet with the child to determine the eligibility of the child to our service. So assessing the eligibility of the child or the client is all children should be below 18 years of age who had been sexually abused. They are all eligible for our services. Intake and assessment requires also assessing the risk factors of the child for future abuse, referral to psychiatrist, and temporary shelter. Referrals are taken from individuals, walk-ins, or institutions. All referrals must go through an initial interview of assessment prior to being accepted for counseling, based on the program's ability to provide the needs of that particular child. So after the intake, we also go to the assessment. So assessment of the child will be based on the framework of traumagenic dynamics, which focus on the strength-based response. So these strengths will be balanced with the perceptions, which are the thinking and feeling and behavior of the child, for an empowered treatment plan. The social work person and environment model recognizes the interrelationship between the client and all aspects of the environment but must be taken into consideration. So it is also a comprehensive model for understanding the trauma of sexual abuse and its short and long-term effects of sexual abuse. We also assess the 10 issues related to child sexual abuse, which identified in the traumagenic dynamics. These are the physical needs, psychiatric, legal, safety, body integrity, sexuality, shame, guilt, responsibility, anger, interpersonal relationship, prevention, education. There were times where the clients who are involuntary but forced to come to counseling. For this client, CPTCSA will request at least 4 weeks of sessions to hopefully build a healing relationship. It is important, especially for these clients, to let them determine what they want. If the child is high risk for reoffense, home visits are needed, and they will receive self-help materials based on their age. So for our treatment planning, all issues will be reviewed and prioritized with the treatment plan depending on the list. Treatment plan must be done with the participation of the clients. Depending on the age, ability of the client should sign the treatment plan in order to increase the responsibility over the healing. So, aside from that, we will also focus on the behavior, particularly the thinking, feeling, and behind the behavior should also be focus of that treatment plan. So, aside from that, after the formulation of the treatment plan, we go to the implementation of treatment plan, wherein we are also going to put what are the priorities of that, particularly if it's under the caring aspect or the needs of the client, and also the healing component referring to the emotional health and well-being, such as self-esteem, elimination of nightmares, or restoration of family relationships. And there's also the part of teaching, which is very essential, particularly in cognitive changes um, needed in children towards their awareness and even towards behavioral changes. Termination of the case is also one of the pivotal in this process, wherein termination occurs when the child no longer needs counseling, requests to leave the counseling, moves away, or no longer returns for counseling. For these cases that stop coming despite the assessment of the continued needed care, CBTCSA will make every effort to meet with the child of support system. For those cases that are closed, a case summary will include initial problem presented, services provided, and final assessment of the client. When possible, a follow-up session will be sought after 6 months, either inviting the client to return for a session or preferably a home visit. Under that is also, we also do the case management through the identification of the 10 major issues. So the social worker or the counselor will carry out referral for legal, forensic, and even psychiatric. We also provide the Kids and Teens Court Awareness Program. So this is a one-day program held in an actual courtroom to prepare children for their day in court. Issues include telling the truth, relaxation, and knowing the people and practices of the court system. Families are also invited to attend the session to help parents understand the system and prepare them for possible outcome and support the children need through the process. There were also instances when the social worker or the counselor was also ordered by the regional trial court to testify in court. The expertise in handling the case was attested in court, particularly on the assessment on the impact of sexual abuse to the children. CPTCSA also work with a multidisciplinary team. So it consists of an outside agency professionals who will meet on a regular basis to conference difficult cases. Each MDT or multidisciplinary member will be given in advance the relevant case study and an outline of the specific interventions and ongoing problems for discussion. So case conference should are done in a monthly basis. So Aside from this multidisciplinary team, we also have the supervision and also the mentoring of the social workers. So this is needed because direct workers or counselors need supportive supervision. Thus, CPT is committed to the interactional supervision model for an effective supervisor-supervisee relationship. The goal is an empowerment of the social worker who can then facilitate and empower the clients. Mentoring services has two purposes. One is staff development. The second purpose is client success. Mentoring does not replace regular case conference or supervisory meetings. Instead, mentoring is meant for an added form of support for direct social workers, either requesting or needing the support. Mentoring is based on ongoing case analysis with a view of staff development, personal reflection, and competency issues. Mentoring is meant to focus on awareness raising for social worker and thus is driven by the needs and development of the social workers. We have also this HELOM Counseling Center. So our counseling session are done inside the HELOM facility. So this picture is an example of that facility. So HELOM means to heal. So it's a good venue. It provides a safe place for clients and their families. Intake interviews, assessment sessions, individual and group counseling were facilitated and done here. So this counseling facility were also composed of different therapeutic materials from CPTCSA and other international or other from foreign, wherein we use it or the social worker use it for their sessions with the clients. And of course, lastly, we have the helpline. So the helpline is a special online service that people can call for psychosocial and emotional help. This support is the context of emergency, crisis, and counseling needs. So for emergency needs, diba, this includes those who are needed of those who have those include suicide, safety, life-threatening, health, and other immediate needs in the context of emergency. CPTCSA will immediately refer the client to the local emergency hotlines. We have also the crisis needs, which is this is a one-time processing to resolve the issue at hand. Clients are equipped to know what to do with his or her situation, which includes anxiety, problem solving, and some loneliness. And lastly, it also doing the counseling needs of the client. The calls are needing guidance in resolving psychosocial and emotional issues, particularly child sexual abuse. For cases related to domestic violence or any other abuse, it can be referred to other agencies. For cases needing or regular counseling or long-term counseling service, the responders will do an intake and arrange the caller's counseling sessions with CPTCSA sessions. So thank you. So that's it.
Thank you, Jen. That was brilliant. Thanks for sharing how CPTCSA implements treatment program through the counseling center, helpline, individual group family through the multidisciplinary team. Thank you very much. And we will wait if there will be questions later on. Now, I would like to invite Angel and Leonardo to speak about the JUCONI's intervention.
Thank you very much, William. Fundación JUCONI Mexico is an organization that has been working for more than 20 years with girls, teenagers, the youth and their families that live in violent conflicts or violent situations. These families have lived like that for generations, and that has resulted in complex trauma, situations, poverty, exclusion, lagging behind at school. It also limits the development of children and teenagers. So we have a special approach at JUCONI based on the trauma theory. And we also use our approaches based on the attachment theory. We want to create a situation in which they can overcome the adverse experiences through safe mental health and the creation of safe spaces for families to interact with each other. I'm going to talk about specific activities. My colleague Leonardo will talk about those specific activities. Thank you. Thank you, Angel. Yes, so as Angel was saying, part of the intervention that we do at JUCONI takes place in ecological activities, with ecological activities. And we think it is important for us to be able to pay a visit to their families at home, because their homes is where most of the healing and the problems take place. Next slide, please. Something that we do. Next one. Next one, please. Something that we do. Previous one, please. Previous slide. So we do a sanctuary model, meaning that we create a safe place for the development of children and teenagers. This model enables us to create some elements for their development. For example, safety elements. We use the SALI paradigm. Moral safety, social safety, physical safety, and psychological safety, so that they can create a safe place, beginning with their physical safety, with elements thanks to which they feel safe, where their integrity is respected. We also want to do interventions aimed at providing figures of attachment for those people, those children and teenagers. They need people they can attach to. We also create support networks with institutions and within the community. So our intervention is like an intervention within families, with the families. They benefit from our participation. Next slide, please. As for the moral safety, next one, please. We work on moral safety, and morality for us is the series of rights and principles that make us feel safe beyond the family. And that's why we also provide interventions within the community with special institutions that can guarantee the respect of those people's rights. We also work on affection, because the population we work with have some problems to show affection to each other, or how they receive affection. An important element of this sanctuary model is the bereavement, because we work on how to deal with bereavement and how to deal with the situations in which someone has lost a loved one, how they deal with it, how they face the routines. And sometimes we lose the ability to interact with the rest of people when we are feeling blue. Sometimes there's a trend to an excess of mourning, or or an excess of grief or sorrow, because when people have lost a loved one, they feel abandoned. So we provide a space for people to feel that sorrow, that grief, that mourning, so that they can close the process once they are ready, instead of feeling abandoned because of a previous experience in their life. And we also talk about hope for the future. And on many occasions, the people who work with focus on like a survival way of life. The elements they use in their daily lives are focused on cover immediate needs. So they cannot understand their lives as something that will have a future. So we work on predictability, we work on the notions of future, hope. We accompany them, work with them into how they perceive the future life could be, and family and individual planning, instead of just focusing on the immediate needs. They also need plans. They need to plan for the future. They need to see there's a future. So the interventions that we have devised are focused on generating hope among people, so that they can also they can start believing in the future for them and for the future generations. Because violence has the effect of making people stop thinking about the future. They live like in a survival mode. They just want to survive. They just want to live for one more day. And by breaking the violent patterns, people start thinking about the future for them and for the future generations. So we work with people who can work in the streets, on the ground, and they can understand how their impacts, how their healing heals the next generations. Next slide, please. In each of our interventions, we have some common elements. For example, tidiness. We want to convince the families that tidiness is important at their homes. So they need some order, and they need to be clean, they need to be tidy also at their homes. That doesn't mean luxury or fancy things. It doesn't have to do with the socioeconomic level of the families. No, tidiness is for everyone, poor, rich. They just need to keep everything tidy. And sometimes we know they live in very tiny places, but they can be tidy nonetheless. And they can perform some basic activities in there. For example, if they have a table for lunch or for dinner, they can use the same table for the homework of the children. So they can clean the table and get it ready for some clerical activities of homework. We also insist on the notion of respect for everyone, general respect, and also respect for their culture, their beliefs, their values. So we really need to focus on that. We need to perform a respectful intervention that complies with the criteria, that respects every aspect, every side of the families. Each educator at JUCONI plays an important role in terms of emotional safety and emotional intelligence. They need everyone to understand how to overcome traumatic experiences, trauma experiences in children and teenagers, but also their carers, their family members. And we also work on the notion of predictability. We expect all interventions to be predictable, because predictable is something that erases violence, because when you can predict something, when you can foresee or anticipate something, you no longer fear it. So we work on predictability in every aspect. We provide weekly interventions with every families and always at the same day, at the same time. So they can expect us, they can anticipate there will be a session with them, and they can feel safe. So they can understand that some things in life are predictable. Some others cannot be controlled or anticipated or predicted, but we give them tools to try and accept them as unpredictable. But when it comes to us, we try to make everything as predictable as possible. If something happens and we cannot go at the scheduled time and day, we let them know in advance, so that even if we cannot go, even if we cannot perform the service, we can still anticipate that we're not going, and they can accept it. They can see it coming, and they can prepare for it. They can get ready for our not going. Next one, please. So with these elements, we build a safe place for children and families, and we create a comprehensive space where I insist, we take part in every aspect of the intervention. We go to their places, we go to their homes, we go with them, we play with them, we talk to them, we spend some time with the families, and so they can see us as something they can rely on. But we also collaborate with institutions and the communities. We know we want to meet these people at their places, their homes, because we want to see where they live, how they interact with each other, and we interact with them. And with that safe space that we create, that we build, we make it bigger and safer every day, and we involved everyone. We involve everyone. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel and Leonardo. Thank you very much for that clear presentation. I think your work with children and families using trauma-based approach and attachment theories is very powerful, and particularly about creating safe places, emotional safety, and breaking the violent patterns, and also the specific practical things that you do, helping children to keep tidy, respect, and the whole idea of predictability. Thank you so much. If there are any questions, we will come to you later at the end of all the presentations. Now I'm going to invite Caryn from Mulberry Bush for your presentation.
Good, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to talk very quickly to you, or briefly to you, about bringing alive the minds of traumatized children. And you might wonder why I'm approaching a mental health webinar like this. And in order to sort of bring that into some context for you, I'm going to show you, or William's going to show you, a short bit of video. But before you do that, I'm just going to explain the context of the video, William. So every year, the Mulberry Bush has been working for nearly 75 years. And every year we have an ex-pupils day, where we invite ex-children, children who used to live here, and their families to come back. And when it was our 70th anniversary, we had a big party. And one of the video that I'm going to show you in a minute is from one young man who is now nearly 30. And he wanted to talk about his experience of being at the Mulberry Bush when he was a young boy. And I was talking to him, and the thing that really affected me was he said, "You brought my mind alive. So coming to the Mulberry Bush brought me alive," as if he was saying that emotionally he wasn't alive before he came here. He was flat, sort of a dead feeling, that sort of dissociated state, which I think is what the other two presentations have alluded to. And so I really felt very, very much for this young man that spoke and has been videoed, that I thought it would be good to share just a minute of it with you now today. So if you could start the video, William, please.
Yes, Georgina is going to share with us.
Okay, thanks.
I came from a very disturbed, very broken and very challenged background. My father wasn't on the scene, and my mother was heavily dependent on alcohol and substances that were not good for her or me. I was a very fearful child. I was a child that was very scared of those around me. Both adults and other children, actually. It was probably only towards the end of my time at the Mulberry Bush that I started to trust the adults around me and accept that they weren't out to make matters worse. The school as a whole changed me as a person. It changed my understanding of grown-ups around me and how the world around me worked. I have a lot of memories of the Mulberry Bush. It's the things I remember, the children I was here with. I remember the games we used to play. I remember the camping trips we went on. I remember my teachers. I remember being very, very good with computers. I remember a lot more at the Mulberry Bush than I remember anywhere else. I think that's because of it being a safe environment. We tend to shut out the memories that aren't safe. 2 or 3 years of stability in a child's life is a very long time when you compare that to the rest being mostly unstable.
Thanks, William. If you could go to the next slide on the presentation.
Yes, we will share the screen again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If you can move on.
Sorry. Yes.
No, that's fine. I understand. Okay, so I said that, yes. So why the title of the talk? So really, this young man, Chris, has just described to you the reason why I've called the talk Bringing Alive the Minds of Children. And in a way, I think that is what the Mulberry Bush tries to do. If you can go to the next slide, that's lovely, thank you. So, what is the Mulberry Bush? Well, as I said, we have been working for nearly 75 years, and we are a special school with a children's home. So we look after children who can't live at home anymore. That's because they're too frightened to be in a family. Families won't have them anymore. Family isn't a good place for them anymore. It's a frightening place. And we also have a small school here as well. And children can stay with us for 38 weeks a year or sometimes 52 weeks a year. So that means that for some children, they live here with us all the time. Some children go home in the holidays. And home is often a foster family or an adoptive family. Some children are still living with their birth family, and those children, it tends to be with a single birth parent, generally a mother, and they have been exposed generally to a lot of domestic violence. And we take young children from the age of 5 to 13. And what we provide is a package of education, treatment, and care. You can go to the next slide. That was fine, William. Thank you. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, I don't want to say too much about any of the things that we do, but this gives you a broad idea of what we think makes our school therapeutic. So we have a 2-year in-house staff training program, which is trauma informed, very similar to as JUCONI was talking about, and other organisations that are dealing with children who have experienced different types of violent trauma. The reason that we developed our own training course is because, well, there just weren't any kind of specific trauma-informed training courses around, really, that really looked at helping children at such a young age in a residential setting. This 2-year, so everybody who comes to work at the school, in the classes and in the houses, have to do this 2-year course. It's based at a local college, university, and if people don't want to do that course, then they're not really able to work here. They have to be trained to a certain level. One of the other things we do is we work very, very closely with the professional networks around the child. So that's the social worker or the psychologist or whoever it is that's working with the child in their community. We think that's really very important, because if the referrers don't understand how the child is after having been here for 3 years, it's sometimes quite difficult for them to think in isolation about, well, where should the child go when the child leaves this school? What's going to suit them best? What kind of setting is going to work for them? Not only do we work very closely with the professionals, but we have to work with the families, like everyone has been saying. You can't really work with these children independently, just the child on their own, and they have to be seen within a context, a family context and a social context. We have families to come and stay the weekends. So we have family weekends here where the whole family will come and they spend time together with workers and the child. They live here for, they stay for 3 nights over the weekend, generally a weekend. And we also do home visits. We take the children to their families, and we sometimes do this kind of therapeutic work within the family. The main thing I would say about what is unique about our organisation and the way that the staff work is that I think the staff stay, as I said, close to children's feeling states. So we try not to talk too much to the children about what is good behaviour or what is bad behaviour, but we try and help the children begin to understand what they're feeling like. So what does it feel like for them to be them at the moment in their body? How's their body making them feel? And these are children and nobody has talked to them probably about how they feel. So we give them 3 years of really trying to help them come alive inside their bodies and then think, well, if my body feels like this, then that means maybe this is the feeling I've got. And when I've got this feeling, I know I need to do a certain thing. So we try to really help children get in touch with themselves as people and to come alive as people. Now that is, it sounds in a way quite easy, but it's actually very difficult. And with children who are very upset a lot of the time, they themselves might be violent, they might spit at staff, they might, be violent as well. This has quite an impact on the staff. And so we offer regular reflective groups for staff frequently. So everybody who works with the children has to attend a regular staff group. It's generally fortnightly for an hour and a quarter. And the team that work together, so it'll be the team in one of the houses or one of the classrooms, they come together and they talk about what the experience has been like looking after the children at the moment. And the reason that we offer this to staff is because we realise the secondary trauma that there can be of looking after children and traumatized families. And that we want staff to feel safe as well doing the work. Can you go to the next slide, please, William? Just check on the time. Yeah, so just going a little bit to, so what, I've mentioned some of this just now. So what do our research findings tell us? I'm just going to say a bit about research because my job before was the head of therapy within the school and having a clinical oversight of the children. And I've sort of moved sideways in the organisation, and I'm trying to think about doing research. And there's not that much research about residential care in England, although I know there is a lot more in America. So what our research is saying to us is that researchers have noticed that the setting for the child is we keep things safe and edgy. So I don't know if the translators can really get that feeling, but the safety, I think people have mentioned that already, that we don't want children or adults to be hurt. We don't want buildings to be hurt. We don't want children to damage buildings or themselves or the staff. But we also like the environment to be edgy. And by that, I mean, we don't want it to be too comfortable where nobody's talking about feelings. But we don't also want it to be too traumatizing where children are being triggered all the time. So it's trying to get the balance right between helping children be really aware of their feelings in a way that they've never been before. As I said, we encourage staff not to think about the children's behavior as a type of communication to us. And that if we can understand children's behavior as saying something about how they feel, then in our experience, that tends to help children understand themselves a bit better. Because of the experiences that children have had in their families, as our first speaker was talking about, particularly in terms of children that have had been sexually abused, but also children that can't live with a family. That brings with it real feelings of shame. You know, the children feel very low in themselves. They feel they're worthless. And so really helping staff to be sensitive, super sensitive to children and what it feels like for them not to live with a family and to have been abused or neglected. And then, as I said, the other thing the research findings suggest is we really need not only to have a therapeutic milieu for the children, but we really need to look after our staff. I don't know if I've got another slide. I don't know. I think there was just one more slide. Can you just go one back a bit, William? So this is just really some findings from parents and carers. So from some research that we did, after 1 year, parents and carers said that the children were easier to be with, they were less aggressive, there were less violent incidents, and that children were more in touch with their feelings. That children feel after 1 year, people felt that the children's communication at home had got better. And an important thing was that in all of the research we've done so far, the birth mothers feel that they benefited personally from their children being given help here. So they learned from their children and what their children were learning. So these tended to be children where they'd come from a family of domestic violence. So the mums actually felt more confident in their parenting from their child being here. Anyway, I think I'm probably up to time now. So thank you very much. And I'll end there.
Thank you, Caryn. That was really brilliant. Starting from your title, Bringing Alive the Minds of Traumatized Children. And the case study was really powerful. The young man concluded saying at the Mulberry Bush, he felt safe environment and stability. Then also how you work in your special school using trauma-informed approach, and also the training course that you have, looks like all holistic program, and finally staff staying close to children's feeling, and then also you're also prioritizing and looking at staff health. Thank you very much for your sharing presentation, and we will look for the questions later if the participants have anything more. Now we invite Stella, last but not the least. Stella, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share an experience that we developed in Colombia that is related to the art therapy and the acceptance therapy and compromise. I don't know why I cannot see myself on the screen, but it doesn't matter.
We can see you.
Le podemos ver. The experience I would like to share is one experience that we have lived and developed, and is related to children, boys and girls from Colombia that have been in an armed group. And after being on this armed group, they went to an institution where they have to receive all the support to come back to be part of the society. They are not with their families because they are at a transition moment. They are living an armed weapons group and start the inclusion in a society. And they have to resettle the family bonds. This process is very complicated. What is the process of art therapy? It is also related and linked to the inclusion. Next slide, please.
Yes.
Thank you. This experience I'm going to share, we worked on this psychosocial development center, and we collaborated partly with this other institution, Pereira Institute. We created a handoff that is written as well. Next slide, please. That is one of the working groups. Next slide. Art therapy is an artistic therapy that consists of using arts as a therapeutic way to heal, to transform these situations that affect us emotionally after traumatic distress, psychological disorders, how to survive personal blockages, to remember specific situations through the family. Art therapy not only contributes to treat these strong traumas, it is a technique that lead us to bring all the emotional to life, the emotional parts of us, to transform our lives using art. Next slide, please. What we combine the acceptance therapy with the compromise and the ACT therapy. It's led us these cognitive therapies, how to review these different values. We generate a communication, a chat, how to speak. We want to speak about the situation and the sensation of experimenting, how to live a new life. It's a transition into a new life, a new society. Next slide, please. How does the therapeutic encounter takes place? How does it take place? The art therapy and the compromise therapy, they are combined, and we do that by specifying the meaning and the purpose of what is being done. We create acceptance, a safe space. There is a group and teamwork, but there is also an individual communication. It is important to create a sense of belonging among all the group participants. It's essential that the facilitators and our therapists are there through all the process and accompany all the group until the end of the process. Participants should know that it is a process, and it will take at least 6 to 12 sessions. We do a weekly meeting, but it can last from 6 to 12 sessions. And all the participants will be there in every session, because every change can affect all the group dynamics. In these processes, we assure that all participants are present during all the processes, because sometimes they are working in institutions, they are on different foster care places or homes. So we try to negotiate to create a new atmosphere. Next slide, please. As a part of this acceptance and compromise therapy, we have these important elements, that is the full attention. It's important aspects, the development of the participants' mindfulness skills, the experience that all our children can have. They have to be try to be there for the experience. We offer them a chance of giving them a space where they can be there, a safe space to live an experience that is conscious from the artistic point of view. Their activities are there to in order to communicate, to create a useful space. Well, this therapy is a conscious process, the creation art. We give them a full attention to this specific group of children who have lived trauma, violence, sexual violence. They have lived several, especially the girls. Their bodies have been abused, so they have lived several traumas. Next, please. Next slide. What is required for this, to open this process? What is needed? The creativity is essential, the arts, the acceptance and compromise therapy. The important thing is to be assured, like the organization of the participants, the materials, the tools, that everyone has the tools and the different parts of materials that is essential. Please, next slide, were the materials, the different varieties that we have at our disposal. We talk about brushes, paints, molding tools, cutting elements, tools. We have to have 12 materials at least, and everyone is essential to paint, to mold, different pencils. This creates creativity. Molding, it can be difficult through the situation of the several children. There is fear. Sometimes they don't want to dialogue, to communicate in a different space and different environment. And through these materials, it is possible to mold this part we gained, like the connection with our own body, and then the connection with the chance of expressing ourselves, of communicating ourselves. Next slide, please.
Stella, you have another 1 or 2 minutes left, please.
Go
ahead. Yes, thank you.
Magazines, the use of magazines allow people to approach different processes, people who cannot talk, who cannot communicate through these spaces. It's important to show, to evoke all the things the person doesn't want to relive. It's a way to express a certain emotion. This will ease the process of communicating. Next slide. I talked about the recycled materials. We can live with bottles, fabrics, we can do creative works. I also already talked about it. Let's go to the next one, please. What is the metaphor for working with a creative process? It's essential. I always work with a metaphor, that is the baggage, the luggage. Especially when we are talking about art, we gotta talk with all the members, with all the participants. What is our baggage through this experience? Our thoughts, our feelings, our bodily sensations, and all other aspects of our inner experience that we carry with us. That's our baggage. We cannot control our thoughts. We have to let them feel, and all the emotional reactions or bodily reactions, we have to let them flow. We must carry them with us on our life's journey towards the most meaningful to us. So we express ourselves through the art, and this is a space of difficult inner spaces, experiences that always have been there. We can talk about them, we can communicate them. All the baggage can be lighter because we are leaving our baggage on this art creation, and we are lighter. Let's go to the next slide, please. No, the next place that was before. Very well. Here we have an example of this creative scenery when we are talking about all the works, about what we expressed, how we started, how we ended up. Let's go to the next one, please. This part is important to end because we need consent from every participant for this process. Every session has to be assessed. It's important to be evaluated individually from each participant, how this person get into the session, how it ended up, and do like an assessment in a group way. How does the group accept all this session, this meeting? For that, there are some measures, initial measures and formats. For example, be able to write what they get from the session. These formats are written on the handoff on manual that we will share with you later on. I don't have much time. Let's go to the next slide, please. It's important to determine the effectiveness of this method. For this, we use a questionnaire, general health questionnaire, and an assessment. It's an assessment questionnaire to assess every session of the participant. because it will change from one session to the other. And let's end with the next slide, please. As a facilitator or facilitators who can work on this way needs to be present and response. The creation has to accompany, to be there, to be linked to the reactions of the participants. It must be accompanying all the reactions, the emotions of the participants. The empathic attitude has to be there, and let's go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, we may have to wrap up here, Stella.
I'm going to end, please. There has been a delay. I would like to end up saying that we work with a code of conduct of the group that we transform, we evaluate to take the best approach of every and the best result of all the sessions. And we use all the tools, all the materials, because we are struggling to fight against an extreme violence situation. We have to find emotions and feelings in our own bodies. And then last slide, just to end, please. Thank you very much. And the next, just an example of what we do. Let's go to the next. There's nothing left, just a tiny little thing. Let's go to the last one. We can use questions that are useful for this process. What changed? I would like to show you this photograph just to see the end. There has to be a party, a celebration, to understand that we did a good work. The baggage, we left it there. We went to another point. After transitioning together, through sharing all the situations that affected our body. But today we gave a huge step, so it's essential. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you very much. That was very powerful experience of yours, especially working with children in armed conflicts and psychosocial development center that you have using art therapy, leading to emotional liveliness, and then how you use the different, the accompaniment process that you talked about, and then even things like mindfulness and not leaving the way it is, but also evaluating and discussing and having a code of conduct, the beautiful colors in your slideshow and the activities that really show that things change. And you also mentioned that it takes a little time. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, we'll come back to you later. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And then I really want to thank all the panelists, Jen, Angel, Leonardo, Caryn, and Stella, for sharing your experiences in such detail. I'm sorry some of you, we couldn't have enough time. Now we have almost like 14 minutes left for questions. You can please put your questions or raise your hand. But while you're thinking about your questions, I want to give YCDA, an organization in Orissa, who have requested to speak for a couple of minutes on their experiences. So Rajendra and team, you're welcome. And in the meantime, others, please get your questions either in the chat box or you can raise your hand. Is Rajendra and team ready, or shall we go to a question?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is Anakha. I'm the program manager of the Resilient program of YCDA. I think Rajendra sir have had to leave because of some issues, and so he had asked me to like brief about the project.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Just for 2 minutes.
Right. So firstly, kindly excuse because there's a little network issue, and so I won't be able to, turn on my video. And it gives a lot of hope to hear actually the different stories of approaches of mental health in child care. And it's also very humbling to share the child resilient model that we have at YCDA. And we, in child resilient model, we try to look at the holistically at the development of child. So we basically try to understand the different arenas that they interact with, which is basically the school, their family, their communities, their peers, and also them individually. And so we try to look at the issue with respect to their education, like how safe they are at their school space and how they are able to participate in matters which are important to them. So participation also becomes an important issue. And lastly, we tie both of these to the self-resilience, where they are aware of what is affecting them, and this awareness of their rights, and also an empowerment of how to participate in those rights actually helps them to understand how resilience will help them in their journey, both self and also while engaging with others, engaging with their peers to understand how they can help each other, and also engaging with the community members, or be it adults or service providers, to ask for what actually matters to them, so that they by themselves can make the change that they want to. So in this model, we try to understand or we try to perceive kids as not just normally we see as just the receivers, but also by themselves, that they have the agency to make that change. So this is the kind of resilience model that we are trying to bring in, and we have started our work in trying to understand what are the needs, what are the issues that children face, and also how do they perceive resilience, and also try to understand their emotional needs, also with respect to the community and also family, because a lot of the children that we cover are basically from very difficult backgrounds, be it their vulnerability in their families, or often, or even the community that does not support them. So we try to look at this issue with different platforms in their schools, community, family, and try to empower them. And like also mentioned, we are also involving art-based and sport-based models, and also something called a community center, which is a platform, which is a physical space for children to come together, where they can discuss about the issues. They can also decide on how they can tackle them, and also where they can engage with each other to have meaningful participation. So this is a very short brief about the project. Thank you for the space to actually share about this.
Thank you so much for talking about your resilience model and the community center. There was a question to Caryn in the chat, and Caryn has replied. The question was about they're running school for 75 years. My question is that, do you address or provide support to children with disabilities, as they are more risk of violence? And Caryn replied saying that yes, we do, but we do not often get referrals for children with disabilities. We have facilities for children with a physical disability. Do you want to talk about it for Caryn? A little more on that?
Yes, I can do. I don't know if it's the same in other countries, but in England, children with physical disabilities, their sort of emotional and mental health needs tend to get overlooked by their bodily physical needs. And so I think that's why they don't get referred to us very often. Although we do have children quite often who have got some kind of hearing loss. And We had a child who had a very bad hearing loss because of being hit when he was a small child, and he lost his hearing. We have a child with something similar happened, I think, when he was a baby. His head was hit and his vision is very poor. That's not quite the same thing as you're asking maybe about physical disabilities, but we have those children. We have children with epilepsy, so children that have fits. We have had recently a girl who had sort of what we call hemiplegia. So one side of her body was paralyzed, not working the same as the other side. Sometimes she could walk okay, and sometimes she needed some help. We have one house where the doors are wide. So if we had a child in a wheelchair or a parent in a wheelchair, then we've got facilities on the ground floor where they can live and sleep and have a bathroom. So it's probably, the facilities are probably not as good as they could be, but we don't have many referrals. And I think that's a problem probably around the world. And I know, having listened to Sandra before on these webinars, that's an issue as well.
Thank you, Caryn. Is there any other question from anyone? We have few minutes left. There is one question from the India Alternative Care Network. I wish to know from the speakers if they use any scale or parameters to see change in child's mental health post-interventions. Do you use any assessment scale? See the change in children after the interventions have been done? The question is to any of you. Are you speaking, Stella? Please go ahead, interpreter.
Yes, we have one scale. It was in one of my slides. We have a questionnaire for mental health that we use. We also have a scale, a resilience scale, pre and post intervention. We also have a projective test with a map with resilience based on the I am, I can, I have, etc. And we see how they change as we progress with the intervention.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone wants to add to that? Okay.
Yes, we use different scales. We use the family functioning scale. We want to assess the necessary elements in the families that can guarantee an optimal development for children. We also use, for example, the inventory with that takes into account the physical elements that are needed for development of children. We also have some tools for the case analysis so that we can identify and detect elements that might be overlooked by other scales. We use reflection works and teamwork, to detect and identify expected changes in their mental health.
Thank you, Leonard. Any other question? If we have few minutes left, I have another last slide. Caryn?
William, I could just say we also use a number of scales, but rather than say which ones we use, is maybe to ask participants to look on the, do you remember the document that we did with Sharon? At the end of the document, there's a large section about the tools that people use. If people could look at that document and then they could follow up the tools that they're interested in, maybe. Okay. Or maybe people from the talk today could send them in and you could share them or something like that as well.
Yes. So we can share that.
Yeah.
One last question. I think we can only take this question. How do we ensure continuum of care when a child or a person is transitioning across different care settings, example, institution to family in a rural setting? does any of you want to, it's not addressed to anyone's particular, how to ensure the continuum of care from an intervention to the other. And in the meantime, Georgina has placed here the link for the document. Is anyone of you willing to respond to that last question? How do we ensure continuum of care? Yes, please.
Yes, I
Yes,
can share some information
Jen?
about it.
Yes, Jen, go ahead, please. Short, please. Please go ahead.
Sí, justo lo que podemos, what
Jen,
we
I
can
think
do
Leonard is
is,
speaking after that.
what
Sorry,
we
Jen,
can
Leonard
do,
is speaking. Okay, go ahead, Leonard.
we can do a psychological intervention, a systemic intervention, yes. So we can also insist on making changes in the public policy so that we can create more spaces, more safe spaces. And for example, one important thing is how we close the interventions. When we decided it's time for the children and the families to work on their own, how we decide to close the intervention, because maybe JUCONI will not be the only institution to make an intervention. Other institutions can come after us.
Yeah, thank you, Leonard. I think for the lack of time, we will close here. Thank you very much. I just want to bring your attention to the opportunities that we have through the Family for Every Child Mental Health Working Group to continue defining and sharing what mental health is in different contexts, also identifying capacity building needs of staff at different levels and advocating for mental health. Before we close, I would like to reiterate that we will be running one more webinar on the topic of mental health in December, when we will hear from more Family for Every Child and other practitioners on the type of mental health support they offer to children in the context of thematic groups of family, that is the domestic violence, sexual violence, children in conflict with the law, children on the move, and children in kinship care. So please keep an eye out for further details coming soon. I also want to mention our community platform for child rights practitioners called Change Makers for Children. Most of you will have registered for this event via this platform. It is a space for local practitioners to come together, connect, collaborate, and communicate, to learn from each other about what's working on the ground, to participate in discussion, solve problems, participate in advocacy initiatives, and engage with, influence the wider sector. If you haven't already, we really welcome you all to become active participants in this global digital platform with this topic and many others. Visit changemakersforchildren.community to sign up. We will also put the URL in the chat box. Now, in closing, I would like to really thank our speakers for taking the time to share their work and insights, and to all of you for joining and participating. Thank you also the interpreters. Thank you, Georgina, for being behind the scene and supporting this event. Before we end, we ask you to please complete a final poll to share some feedback with us on today's event. It will just take probably a few seconds. And while you're completing the poll, thank you, the panelists, and we hope to see you again soon for another online event.